Hello, this is Vulturefire, and today's video is another most improved cards video. So this is for Trials of the Breach Part 2. So this is covering changes between the last patch, which was 7043, and the current patch, which is 7113. Technically, this is supposed to be a top 10 list, but I included a bunch of honorable mentions because there was a lot of stuff that changed this patch that I thought was worth talking about. So let's get into it. First of all, Careful Aim. So previously this card was Careful Shot, and it was, I don't remember what exactly it did, but it wasn't great. The new version, you get Marksman 1, and you upgrade and you get Marksman 2. And Marksman means that the next damaging card you play will get plus 100% crit chance. So if you don't have any crit chance, that means that is just straight up your next card is a crit. But if you already have critical, then that is because of how critical chance above 100% turns into critical damage, then that effectively gives you plus, it guarantees the crit, and the extra 50% becomes critical damage. So this becomes a very powerful card potentially if you can line it up. I don't use it because I'm bad at planning, and it is a card that, similar to like Shock, requires you to be pretty good at planning to use it effectively. But it can allow you to set up a massive amount of damage if you use it right. Next up, Trial by Fire. So this one I haven't used much because I keep forgetting that it changed. But it used to be 5 mana, you would get Burn and Tough, and you would draw 3. And that ended up not really quite being worth it because it was so much mana. But now it is 4 mana, you gain Burn 2 and draw 3, and you draw 2 more if you have 5 or more Burn ranks. And this is quite a bit better, especially for Naema, who is often going to be using Incandescent Ritual to apply self-burn. Because this can draw you quite a few cards, like drawing 5 for 4 mana is very good, obviously, and even just drawing 3 for 4 is pretty okay. And that difference between 4 and 5 mana, I think, is really, really important, especially because like focus in particular makes that relevant. But there are a lot of cards that make 4 mana, a lot fewer that make 5, which means that like at 4 mana, if you draw 3, it's very likely that like you can just draw 1 mana card to pay for it. And then the other 2 cards are just like bonus value. So yeah, overall, a lot stronger. Next up, Patient Focus. So previously this was you gained 5 mana and then you lost a mana for each card in your hand. Now it is you gain 1 mana. If it's in your hand at end of turn, you increase this value by 1 and you gain growth 1, and it has retained. And upgraded is you gain 2 mana, still increases the mana by 1, but you gain growth 3 at end of turn. It's retained. The reason this is only an honorable mention is that I think that the unupgraded version is pretty bad. It just starts too low and scales too slow, and the growth is too irrelevant. Because, you know, if it is not upgraded, it takes 6 turns for you to start getting plus 1 mana per turn from the growth. Whereas once it's upgraded, it's every 2 turns you will get 6 growth, which is obviously much, much, much faster. That's the difference between like getting it on turn 3 and getting it on turn 7. By the time you get to trying to think like, so on turn 7 at the start of turn 7 with Patient Focus, you have growth 6, you've gained plus 1 mana from that, and then it's upticked 6 times, so you get 7 mana from playing. So that's totaled 8 mana from it on turn 7. With Patient Focus Plus, at the start of turn 3, you'll start getting plus 1 mana. Start of turn 5, start getting plus 2 mana. So it's 1, 2, and then 4, 6. And then at the start of turn 7, you'll get 3 mana for total. So you've got 9 mana off growth. And then you can play this for 8 mana. So that's a total of 8 plus, I said 9, right? Yeah, 8 plus 9 is 17 compared to 8 mana from unupgraded Patient Focus, which is obviously a huge difference. Also, you don't have to wait that long. Like Patient Focus Plus, if you play it on turn 3, so assuming again you get on turn 1. So you play it on turn 3, you get 4 mana out of it, and now for the rest of the fight, that is just a mana card that says gain 4 mana, and it has given you a mana every turn for the rest of the game, for the rest of the fight. So like it's still a slow card, but like Patient Focus Plus absolutely can be a good card in a slow deck, but Patient Focus unupgraded isn't. So that's why this is only an honorable mention. Flaming Strike. So this is a monster card. It used to deal damage to the first 2 enemies, and it gave them a small amount of burn. There wasn't really any deck that was super excited about it, but now it is another cleanse card. And this is super relevant because if you're fighting idols, especially if you're doing quick play, having the ability to pick up cleanse cards is important. And this is a card that is low cost, that cleanses you, and cleanses you twice on upgrade. That's just very, very useful to have available to you. Now onto the actual list itself, starting with number 10, Spry Vigor. So Spry Vigor, you gain 2 mana, you gain 4 additional mana if you haven't triggered Fatigue this turn, and then it is upgrades to 2 mana and then 7 if you haven't triggered Fatigue this turn. So previously, this may seem like the same card, but the difference is now it only counts if you have triggered Fatigue, which means that if you have drawn enough cards to trip the threshold. It, however, is not disabled by getting Fatigue from Idol of Cruelty, Sinister Runestones. It's not turned off by getting Fatigue directly from enemies like Evil Mist or CPU. It's not disabled by Idle Emptiness giving you Fatigue. It's not disabled by Area 3 White Flame giving you Fatigue. So the reason I really didn't like Spry Vigor previously was that there were too many turns into idols where you would just have it turned off at the start of your turn and it wasn't your fault. There was nothing you could do about it. But now, that's not a problem. Obviously there's still decks where it's not going to be good, but there are a lot more situations where it is just going to do good work for you. Next up, Bide Time. So Bide Time is now 2 mana, choose any enemy. If it will attack, draw 2, and give that enemy weak 1 and vulnerable 1. And it has retained. So this makes it and then it upgrades into 1 mana, draw 2, weak 2, vulnerable 2. So that makes it overall so previously it was an attack card that scaled up as you evaded attacks, but it was just awkward to scale up and it would often not be great. Now it's weak that you can use when you need it, vulnerable you can use when you need it, and it's a cheaply costed draw 2. So all of that is good stuff. It's just overall a very, very useful card to have on hand. And the upgrade is also pretty good. Retained means that it is unlikely to be flat dead. The main situations where it's going to be flat dead are either specifically Evil Mist, which never attacks, or Blinding Clouds Weather. In Blinding Clouds, enemies, even if they are attacking, Bide Time doesn't see that, so it won't do anything. And Blinding Clouds Weather is the one where you can't see enemy intents. Transmute Armor. So this previously stole shield from enemies to give you mana. Now it is you lose 4 shield if you do gain 4 mana, upgrades to lose 7 shield if you do gain 7 mana. So this is fairly easy to turn on for defensive decks, and it gives them, and 4 mana is a pretty good payoff. It also goes great if you have Pocket Shield. Pocket Shield will just immediately turn this on. And this makes it way more consistent than it was previously, because even if you were running cards like Sanctuary or Overflowing Barrier, you may not be able to guarantee that enemies would have shield. And if you weren't playing those cards, there were a lot of enemies that just don't have shield, so it would just do nothing. Or you draw at the wrong time and it wouldn't do anything, because even defensive decks, once you get rolling, ideally you're taking the shield off enemies and they aren't getting it back. So this becomes actually a consistent mana card for any deck that can get shield, and so that's pretty great. And the upgrade being 7 mana is obviously pretty good. 7 shield is more shield to lose, but still, that makes this kind of better than Precarious Draught in that sense, because Precarious Draught is more damage and will eat your purity, although you do have to be able to have the shield to spend on it. So that can be a problem sometimes, but overall I think I like it a lot more. Number 7 is Increasing Stab. Increasing Stab did not change at all. It is exactly the same card. It doesn't have this isn't a thing where I'm cheating, the card text didn't change, but it creates something and the thing it creates changed. No, Increasing Stab didn't change. However, and this is very important, Combat Ready changed. Combat Ready is a common that used to give us Mighty, Adept, and Tough, and now it draws a skill and a strike. Why this is important is that for the Increasing Stab deck to work, you need to be able to draw a strike. You need to be able to have strike draw cards. And before this patch, the only common strike draw card was Rallying Strike. And the reason that was a problem is if you play Rallying Strike, you draw your increasing stab, you play your increasing stab. Now both of those are in your discard pile, and until you shuffle the draw pile, you can't get them back. If you're running 2 Rallying Strikes, it doesn't do you necessarily any better, because like you play the Rallying Strike, you draw the second Rallying Strike, you play your increasing stab. Now all 3 are in the discard pile, same deal, have to shuffle to get it back. But with Combat Ready, you play the first Combat Ready, you draw increasing stab, you draw another skill. And then when you play the second Combat Ready, you shuffle the draw pile to put the stab and the strike back, or to put the first Combat Ready back in, and then you draw the stab, which means that now you do not have to cycle your whole deck to get back to the other Combat Ready, because the instant you play one, it will shuffle the other one back into the draw pile if it was in your discard. So therefore, you can guarantee that you won't have to deal with dead turns where you have to draw through your entire deck before you get back to strike draw. You could already do this by just having picked up cards from Ramparts especially, or if you picked up like Battle Ready or to a lesser extent Arms Race, you could already sort of do this. But having this in the starting deck makes increasing stab decks much, much more consistent. Decreasing mana. So this used to be increasing mana. It used to be gain 3, increased by 1, and then upgraded to, I think, gain 5, increased by 1. Now it's gain 6, decreased by 1, minimum 1. Upgrades to gain 8, decreased by 1. So the reason this is better is that previously the card never really had a great home. Sometimes you would take it because like you wanted to include an epic mana card, but by the time unlike increasing stab where you can like forcibly redraw it to get a lot of damage out of it, you can't do that with decreased mana because there's not enough mana draw, and even if there was, you're not going to be running only 1 mana card because that's not a great plan. But now it is very strong out of the gate. It isn't that good in decks that are playing a very long game, but you just don't run this. And Mana Eruption is still Mana Eruption got nerfed, but it is still going to hold the value that it held before as like a very good scaling mana option. So I would go with that. So decreasing mana, some people have complained, they think it's worth, no, I assure you, starting at 6 and going down, way stronger than starting at 3 and going up. Earlier turns are the ones where you are most likely to be struggling to get set up, either because you are a fast deck and enemies are dead before you're scaled up, or you're a slow deck and you have your wall of defense in play by the time that that increasing mana would get to a reasonable amount. So decreasing mana, way, way stronger in my opinion, and from what I've seen from playing it, so that's worth knowing. Number 5, Charging Focus. So this is the first of 2 character mana cards that I'm going to talk about. Charging Focus, you get 2 mana, and you create 1 increased potential if you have Shield. Upgrades to gain 2, still only 2 mana, but you get 2 increased potentials. So an increased potential increases the effects of all cannon blasts in hand by 20%. So having Shield is a pretty low threshold. Like you'll see in some of my videos, like I will forget that it even has this condition sometimes because I almost always will just have it. But so what this means, so the increased potential means that you play that and that'll reduce the cost of your cannon blasts by 1, which is what Charging Focus used to do. But it will also be a skill for things like Depth Focus, and it will be that increased effect increases all things that the Cannon Blast does, which for a regular Cannon Blast just means arcane and damage. But if you have like Mystical Mod or Defensive Mod, it will increase the things that they do as well. And so the important math here is 20% takes 2 to 2.4, which is still 2, but it takes 3 to 3.6, which rounds to 4, which means if you use increased potential while you have the upgraded Mystical Mod thing, Mystical Blast I think is the name of it. If you have a Mystical Blast Plus in play, it normally draws 3 cards. You use increased potential, it now draws 4 cards. This is obviously very good. This means that, increased potential can get you extra cards from Mystical Mod Plus. It can get you extra Sturdy and extra Purity from Defensive Mod. It just generally does more work for you. And just all around, that makes this a lot more useful because previously all you got was the mana decrease on the cannon. So if you could just have gotten an extra mana for playing, a 3 mana card instead, like a Resolute Focus, then you were just only getting value in very narrow situations. So this makes it a whole lot more useful. Speaking of mana cards that are a whole lot more useful, Shadow Focus. Previously, this was 2 mana and you get 1 extra mana if you're hidden, and 3 mana get 2 extra mana if you're hidden, or whatever. Now it is 2 mana, hidden 1, 3 mana, hidden, gain 2 mana and hidden 1, gain 3 mana and hidden 2. This is way better. This gives it an actual niche where you are using it for, whereas before it was kind of a card that was fine, but Resolute Focus exists, and Merle has no problem stripping Resolute Focus thanks to Smoke Bombs, and that was just like you get 3 mana, or you could use Siphon Card or Focus or any number of other cards that give you 3 plus mana. But now this is another way to get into hidden, which can be very useful. This is great for defensive decks. This means that you don't necessarily need to use 2 preparations. If you use 2 Shadow Focus and 1 preparations, that can be enough to keep you hidden, which is great, especially if you upgrade the Shadow Focus at some point or you upgrade the preparations. And just overall, this is very, very nice to have, I have found. And so, big fan of this new version. Next up, Treasure Map. So Treasure Map used to be when you discarded it, you shuffle treasures into your deck. Treasures are changing, I believe, next patch. One day it said so that shuffling treasures will be better, because right now shuffling treasures is worth the game costs it at 1 mana to shuffle a treasure in or something. But in my evaluation, shuffling treasure in is worth pretty close to no value and is actually negative value later in runs, due to because as the cards that you are otherwise drawing get better, the value of drawing treasure gets worse, because if you were to draw an upgraded epic, that's going to be better than a treasure, right? If I have a choice between drawing the Ether Storm Plus and drawing a treasure, if my deck has Ether Storm Plus, I probably would rather draw Ether Storm Plus. So, But Treasure Map changed. Now it doesn't shuffle treasures in. It creates treasures in hand. So it is 6 mana. It's unplayable until it costs 0, and it creates 2 treasures. And so how is it going to cost 0? Well, you reduce the cost by 1 until you play it, and whenever you play a non-mana card with it in hand. So it starts at 6. Every time you play a card, it gets cheaper. When it hits 0 mana, you can then play it, obviously for free, and you'll get your treasures, which is just really nifty. Treasure Map Plus, same deal, but it creates 3 treasures. All around, very fun. I like this a lot more. It kind of creates this sort of mini game where you're playing all your cards out, then you get treasures. The particular value with it is if you have multiple of them in hand, if you draw another one later after you've already gotten the first one, playing out the treasures will help reduce the cost, which is nice. Treasure Map also is very good in a decks, because if you play a non-mana card, it will reduce the cost of all of them in hand. So it's great target for Inkwell, because you can copy it and then just get all of the treasure value, which is great. So I like it a lot. It's a good card. Highly recommend it. And it can even be okay in aggro decks too, because just treasures are good. Everyone likes treasure. Next up, Defensive Field. So Defensive Field is 1 mana. It used to be 4 mana, you would give all your allies 20 shield or something, which was not actually that great. Now it is 1 mana. You create your choice of Personal Field, Wide Field, or Purification Field 3 times. So, and you can choose different ones each time. So you can get 2 Personal Fields and a Purification Field. You can get 1 of each. You can get 3 Purification Fields. Up to you. Upgraded version does the same thing, but you get upgraded Personal, Wide, or Purification Field instead of just unupgraded versions. So Personal Field is 1 mana skill, gain 6 shield. Wide Field is 1 mana skill, give 6 shield to your allies. And Purification Field is 2 mana skill, cleanse yourself and all allies 1 time. Upgraded Personal Field is 8 shield. Wide Field Plus is 8 shield to your allies. Purification Field is still only cleanse once, but it's only 1 mana, which means that is, if you upgrade Defensive Field, it is 4 mana to triple cleanse yourself. But also, so this is just a very flexible card. Even if you don't care at all about Wide Field, you don't have any ally generation, the fact that this is a card that can be either shield or cleanse as needed, even it's relatively inefficient, because to play this can be 5 mana for a cleansing shield, and cleansing shield is normally 3 mana. But it can also be 6 mana for double cleanse and 6 shield. And if you really need it to, it can be 7 mana for triple cleanse. But it can also be 4 mana for 18 shield. So lots of options, and that flexibility is worth a lot. Also, it is a card that for 1 mana puts 3 cards in your hand. This can be very useful if you're using cards that you need to discard, so you're like using like Rummage, or you have you're playing Inna, so you get like a Mechanized Plating, or you have an Entreat Calamity. In all these scenarios, the fact that you can just play defense, or you just have something that cares about cards in hand. You've got Gushing Wounds, or you're playing Naema and you have Lunar Armor. You can play the defensive field, just like get a ton of cards in hand, and then use them just effectively as blanks and ignore them because they'll just go away at end of turn to get value. And that in itself can also be very useful. So it's a very flexible card. It is definitely relevant. Cauterize is still only 1 mana to get the double cleanse. So you won't always run this over Cauterize, especially if you're doing a more aggressive deck. Although aggressive decks, I don't tend to run Cauterize anyway. The other note here is like this is obviously a whole lot worse than Cauterize against like Bleed or Arcane Leak, because if you have Bleed 4 and you play Defensive Field, now you've taken 4 damage, then you cleanse yourself once and you take 3 damage, and you cleanse yourself again and you take 2 damage. So you spent a total of 5 mana and taken 9 damage, whereas if you just play Cauterize, you will only take 2 damage plus the bleed plus the burn damage. But the point is you have saved yourself a lot of upfront damage just getting rid of that. So that's very relevant. Next up, number 1. So number 1 is a multi-way tie. And I just have this section called Inna cards, because I'm going to talk about, I think, 4 different Inna cards here, maybe 5, because a lot of the Inna cards changed this patch. So Adventurer's Log used to be, this one's not necessarily straight improvement, because the old version was very good. It was when you discard this, you drew 2, you created 2 tools, and you lost some mana, and that was very, very good. But the new version is 4 mana, draw 2, create 1, Inkwell and Quill. And upgrades into 4 mana, draw 3, create 1, Inkwell and Quill. So Inkwell and Quill, if you're not familiar, is the tool that creates a temporary copy of any non-temporary card in your hand. So what this means is that Adventurer's Log is you draw 2 and then you copy the best card in your hand, or because if you have Inna's level 10 passive, you can just keep the Inkwell for later, which is very, very good. Adventurer's Log is incredibly good as a card draw card. That Inkwell is super, super valuable. I know that there are a lot of epics that draw 2. You have Crystal Research, you have Sanctity, and those are both 3 mana ways to draw 2. But I assure you, the Inkwell and Quill is easily worth the extra mana. It just does so much work for you. Next up, Brilliant Idea. So Brilliant Idea was previously trigger wits 1 time. If you do, upgrade a card in hand. Now it is 1 mana, discard 1 tool. If you do, upgrade 1 card this combat and draw 1. Upgrade card this combat is the old wording for upgrade 1 card in hand. And it upgrades to discard 2 tools if you do upgrade 2 cards this combat and draw 1. So I don't tend to upgrade Brilliant Idea. I think having 2 spare tools is harder to achieve. But discarding 1 tool tends to be easier to achieve consistently than wits. That makes this, because worst case scenario, you discard the tool that you got for turn. And that makes this just a lot easier to slot in. And it does still draw a card. So you aren't even down a card to do this. You're just literally spending 1 mana to trade a tool for the top card of your deck and upgrading a card. It does draw after it upgrades though, so you can't upgrade the card that you just drew, unlike the previous version, but that's still very good. I like this a lot. As I said, I don't think the upgrade is great because discarding 2 because the important thing is you have to have both tools, which means you can't get Brilliant Idea Plus off of just the level 1 passive. You have to have either saved 1 with level 10 passive, or you have to create additional tools that turn. And you have to not want to keep those tools, and you have to have 2 cards in hand that you want to upgrade. Ingenuity. So this used to be 2 mana to upgrade all the tool cards in hand, and then 0 mana was the upgrade. Now it is 3 mana, you create 1 tool, and then upgrade all tool cards in hand, and it upgrades to create 2 tools and upgrade all tool cards in hand. What this means is that it is now not just dead when you draw it on a bad turn. Previously, like if you were playing Ingenuity and you only had like the tool for turn, you just were not getting value out of it because spending 2 mana to upgrade a tool and spending 2 mana and a card to upgrade a tool is not worth it. Just getting an extra tool goes a long way because it means you are now getting additional value, and then the upgrade gets you 2 upgraded tools, so that's even better. And so it is still really good if you have other tool generation, but it is a lot less prone to bad turns where it just doesn't do anything for you. So that's very good. Frantic Scouring. So this used to be 0 mana, discard 2 if you got Wits 2 and created 2 tools. Now it's 1 mana, you only discard 1 and you get 3 tools, which is way better. I didn't actually get the upgraded version, my bad. The upgraded version is create 4 tools. But so this is very good. It's 1 mana and 1 card to get 3 tools, which is a lot of tools for 1 mana. You can discard a tool that you don't like to basically re-roll it, which is great. You can discard, we mentioned defensive field. You can discard like a personal field, turn that into tools. You can discard a trash card from idols and turn that into tools. All sorts of options. And 1 mana isn't that big of a cost, and only discarding 1 is a lot better than discarding 2, especially because you're getting 3 tools instead of just 1. Just very good. But speaking of a lot of tools, why would you create 3 tools? You could create 9 tools. So Investigate is 3 mana, choose any enemy, create 1 tool for every debuff type on it, upgrade is 1 mana, same text. You may not know this, but tools can apply debuffs. So you don't have to really work to set this up. You just have to be playing Inna, and you'll have you'll have weak out because you're playing Inna, and you want to get weak on enemies. You'll have like Poison and Relic, Blade, Poison Bomb. Maybe your tool for turn was Serrated Trap, and you added Bleed and Ambushed. And you play Investigate, and you create 5 tools. That's pretty good. Maybe you had Vulnerable, because you had the Vulnerable tool. Maybe you had Shock, because you had a Shocking Baton. Lots of... maybe you have Curse from a Bottled Ectoplasm. Like, lots of ways for this to easily creep up to like 5, 6, 7 tools. This is absolutely getting nerfed next patch. Play it while you can. So there are a couple other end cards that changed, but I decided that I would limit myself at least a little bit. So that's all the ones that I'm actually talking about here. But that's my top 10 most improved cards for this patch. Let me know in the comments which cards you're interested in. We'll try and link the patch notes that has the full list of all changes, so you can see that. It's a good time. Yeah. Good talk, everyone. See you next time. Toodles.